appreciate you coming in tonight. I want to go back to my panel now, and I'll go to you first, Billy Kelleher, because we're told this cost 23 million was the figure we were given. Was that 23 million well spent, as Eamon Ryan told us this week?
Well, I mean, the purpose of a referendum is to take instruction from the people. I mean, these two particular issues were around for a long period of time. They had been discussed for an in-depth period of time, as far back as the early 90s. So, I mean, you know, the government did put forward the referendum. It clearly wasn't well handled from the government's perspective, the explanations, I suppose, the guillotining of debates.
It was, to be fair, as your own Mary Butler acknowledged yesterday, it was half-hearted. People weren't putting their... Did you campaign yourself?
I'm just going to say, I voted yes. Did I campaign? I handed out some leaflets on Patrick Street one day, yes. There was no activity on the ground, being quite truthful, with regard to the political parties, that I could see anyway. And I'm as guilty as the next person. I certainly thought... Well, I mean, I've been involved in lots of referendums. I was involved in the 8th Amendment repeal referendum, for example, on the yes side at the time, and I took a very active campaign in that. I genuinely just... I thought that it would be carried. I genuinely believe that. I thought that most people were going to support it. In the last 10 days, you could sense there was a fundamental shift in thinking on this particular issue. But the government, you know, there was no political activity. Having said all of that, you know, government and opposition, and the main opposition parties, were supportive of it. And in a way, that sort of, you know, undermines the concept of strong, robust debate and interrogation of the facts. And that didn't happen. So, you know, the public took a very different view. But at the end of the day, Katie, I mean, like...
Can I just ask you a couple of questions? Because these are the questions that are flying around. Why did we choose to go with this date on the 8th of the International Women's Day? Because there's local elections and European elections coming up. We could have run it that day. Whose idea was that? Because now it's nobody's job.
Yeah, I mean, look, the government made an announcement last November. I mean, the difficulty with having referendums on election days is we've had this debate before previously.
Did Fianna Fáil support that? Because we are told, the word, it's being reported that it came from the Fine Gael side of the House.
Yes, but the government supported this. So, I mean, I'm not trying to absolve my party's position on this. But, I mean, governments over the years have always been blamed for having referenda on the same day as elections. So some time ago it was decided that you should separate out referenda from elections because they get very partisan, they get very political, and it's better that a referenda is interrogated by the public on its own rather than inside the
I want to go to the rest of the panel in a moment,
elections.
but I just want to put it to you, the overall sense of this was the government said to the people, don't worry about this, it's a bit complicated, don't worry about it, trust us, it'll be grand. And the people did not trust you.
Yes, I think at the outset, the guillotining of the debate, no pre-legislative scrutiny is something that we should all learn a lesson from. That, you know, when you take a proposition to the electorate, to the people, it has to be fully interrogated and debated by all in the Oireachtas, and that certainly didn't happen in this context because there was no pre-leg scrutiny and there was a guillotining of the debate itself. So that was a bad start in the first place. And I've seen referenda, you know, carried. I've seen them being defeated previously, but this one, from the word go, you know, most people would assume that it was passed. And by time, you know, the public had made a determination in their own mind, government was unable to respond.
Peadar Tobin, can I bring you back to what Sinead was saying there about watching politicians congratulating themselves on Saturday that this vote had been, these referendums had been defeated? I mean, who was thinking about Sinead and all the Sineads out there at that moment?
Well, as it happens, I didn't attend the very end of it when the result was announced, so I wasn't participating myself in relation to anybody jumping up and enjoy. I actually think this is a very sorrowful situation. The whole lot is a mess because in the end of the day, what's happened here is that the government created another monument to incompetency. They mixed up a whole lot of different issues in the one amendment. So obviously, in one level they were saying they were recognising carers, but in another level they were taking the recognition from mothers away from the Constitution at the same time. So they're pitting two sectors of society against each other in that just one amendment. And then, you know, there was a bubble, a political bubble, mixed up with some of the NGOs, mixed up with some of the media in relation to this. And they talked about striving in the amendment, but they didn't even bother striving to get the amendment passed. They cared so little about the content of this amendment that they didn't even bother going on the doors or knocking on the doors. They didn't obviously have any skin in the game. So for me at the start, I always believed this was purely about symbolism from the government's perspective. And you can't eat symbolism. And that's the issue here. The people who actually need help on the ground, they want more than symbolism. They want respite care. They want actual access to home help. They want to be able to get the services that they need without launching a 24-hour campaign of emails and phone calls and campaigning with TDs. And that's the experience. And when we analysed this particular these amendments, we saw these as hollow. And I've used that word a dozen times in this campaign. There was nothing in this for people. And actually,
that's not what Sinead felt now.
The truth of the matter is, the key critical point of difference to make a difference to the lives of Sinead and Aisling and Matthew and others is actually the government will to provide the services. And that's, first of all, to say that people with disability, I debated this issue with ministers, and ministers actually, and I brought up the fact that the government actually never engaged with people with disabilities in terms of this whole process at all. And one government minister said to me, Pater, it's not about people with disabilities. That on air, I was told that by a government minister, which is absolutely scandalous, given the fact that in most cases, in many cases in this country, care is delivered with and to people with disabilities. So, I just think that this government, came at this attitude. I think it was as cynical as immediate a marketing backdrop for their election campaign in the next number of months. I saw no will in the government to actually make a change. The thing that would make a change would be the government, first of all, say that people with disabilities should be entitled to socioeconomic rights on their own basis, first and foremost, and that we will make sure economically we'll provide that. But this government have proved the opposite in everything they've done so far in their time in government.
OK, let me bring in Anne-Marie Flanagan. Anne-Marie, you campaigned very hard for a no vote. How did you feel on Saturday?
Yeah, that's a great question. So myself and Dr. Margie Kennedy and 3 other family members, plus another group with a different agenda, we were the only people left. It was really lonely. It was very sad. It was very demoralising to think that not one government representative would even show the respect to be there when it was called. I'm a feminist. I've campaigned around, I remember I was in my 20s when they mooted, a referendum on 41.2, and I remember being so excited about it, and then 2001. And I remember in 2018 when there was a suggestion of a referendum, and then it was the National Women's Council of Ireland actually that said, hang on, we need to look at this. Some organisations are uncomfortable and they want to look at replacing it rather than repealing it. And when I heard the narrative around care, based on my own lived experience and my 30 years of campaigning for the rights of disabled people, immediately I thought, oh no, this isn't going to bode well for equality. And that was even before the Citizens' Assembly was established. Then the Citizens' Assembly was established, and it's really interesting how we change and shift what we'd accept, because when that wording was published, I was like, no way, as a feminist disabled woman married with a child and trying to get on with life, that all it's doing is reinforcing the idea of burden. So when
people are now saying, oh, if only we had gone with the Citizens' Assembly wording, do you think that would have caused just as much grief?
Well, if there was time to debate legislation around it, and there was commitment to protect the rights of everybody in the family, and there was a commitment to provide rights-based services to children and adults with disabilities and older people and anyone else who needed support, I probably would have accepted that interpretation of care. OK,
now you mentioned the National Women's Council there, and I should say we did invite them to join our panel tonight. Nobody was available for that. But you have been very critical of NGOs generally in around this campaign.
Equality, not care, and I personally, absolutely, we have. As an individual, I took lots of time to try and engage with the organisations, and then, of course, I was delighted when Equality, not care came together. There were hundreds of people. We were all meeting on social media, so we did bring people together. People did feel that we were not being represented. And then, of course, moving into the campaign group, we asked National Women's Council of Ireland, why aren't they having a universal understanding of women? Why are they taking this binary binary idea of like a non-disabled, middle-class, privileged woman, and the rest of us are out in the cold. And the opposition parties, like 3 women who are leaders of it, like my heart was broken as a woman in this country. I thought, my goodness, like where is the understanding that we are complex and that we, you know, some women want to be recognised and still within it, and where was the debate? And the other thing, right through the debate, all the elected representatives and everyone, first of all, it's nearly men debating it the whole time, which I found really frustrating. And then the other really important point is that, you know, like the idea that disabled women and family members providing support, that we would be pitched against each other, I find really, really sad. And I hate to hear Sinead express how you're feeling. But also...
But you must have seen that online yourself, Anne-Marie. It got pretty...
Yeah, but
ugly out there.
It did. And I suppose the other organisation, you know, the national organisation representing carers, I found their statement yesterday really interesting, and I think maybe I feel it's disingenuous to say that activists were calling care ableist when we were actually calling the wording in the 42B ableist. Not at all care. I mean, I care.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Let me bring you in, Louise Bayliss. And I should say, Spark is not an NGO. You don't get government funding.
We get no funding.
You are on the board of TROR, which is an NGO and does get government funding. Could you just respond to that? Because there has been a lot of criticism of NGOs and how they engage with this debate.
Yeah, there has been a lot of criticism, and I think there wasn't a lot of time from when the referendum was announced in December 7th, and then we had the referendum to March 8th. So I think initially there was, I know for a fact that when Roderick O'Gorman, Minister O'Gorman, made the announcement of the wording in that room with NGOs, there was a huge amount of disappointment. I think from the only people who were actually happy at that meeting was one family, because they were really happy about the inclusion of unmarried families into it. Every other organisation in the room that would have included TROR, it would have included National Women's Council, they were all very disappointed with the wording. So everybody went back, and obviously that was December 7th, everybody went back into their own boards, into all those consultations, and that does take time to get agreement with boards. But what I will say, there was a very good point made over here by somebody. There wasn't enough consultation with members. It was with board members as supposedly the representatives of the members. So I think if a lesson is to be learned, membership needs to be consulted more, whether it's an online survey or whatever. I think there has to be acknowledgement from the NGO that, yes, membership should have been consulted better, but there was a lot of time constraints.
Yeah, Aisling, did you want to... I'll just get a microphone down to you if you wanted to get...
Just on that, I know for a fact that the Board of Family Carers Ireland were not consulted about this. So that's just one. And Family Carers Ireland are the NGO who would represent carers in Ireland. And I am a member, and I did not get an email that apparently went out to say that they were voting yes, yes. It wasn't to get anyone's opinion. They said they were voting yes, yes, and there was a survey attached, but not everybody got that email.
Sorry, just to be clear, you're saying the board or the members?
No, the board were not consulted, and it wasn't discussed. But members, apparently, some members got an email back in December the 14th.
Okay.
But I'm a member and I didn't get the email. And what it said was that were advocating a yes, yes vote. And there was no, like, what do you think? But there was a survey to form their arguments or whatever.
Okay, actually, now Family Carers aren't with us this evening, so... sorry, yes, Father.
I just think it is quite astounding how much of a bubble that there is, politically speaking, in Ireland at the moment. Like, the political system is quite distorted at the moment in this. And I think the mechanics of that bubble were really visible during this process, because I know of political parties that actually took their cue of some of the NGOs, and the NGOs are under phenomenal pressure. And actually, like, Roderick O'Gorman made a veiled threat at the start in this. Yeah. He said that organisations would have to explain their progressiveness if they go against the government amendment, and they are highly dependent on government funds.
Just let me just
exist.
say on that, we did ask Roderick O'Gorman if he wanted to join us this evening. He wasn't available, and he did respond. He did respond to that. We asked a number of questions then in relation to these issues, and he said in relation to that statement that he put out at the time. He said the Minister's point was that there would be an onus on an NGO that considers itself to be socially progressive to explain why it had not supported what he regarded as a socially progressive amendment in the Constitution. But I just wanted, because we're nearly out of time for this, and you're going to be leaving us, Anne-Marie, but just give you the last word on this.
Yeah, I suppose for me, I realised that we were heard. And I just want to say, I want to thank the people of Ireland, like the highest no vote ever. And to me, I need to take that as a recognition that society does want equality. And there's a charge now to this government and the next government to bring about socio-economic rights for all people, particularly disabled people, because we do live in a very paternalistic society that infantilises disabled people. I mean, it is absolutely unacceptable. We're 2024, and then the distraction of the optional protocol, you know, we're going to ratify that. What disabled people want are rights on an equal basis with everybody else, and to be treated and with that respect, and to see me as a woman in the same way as any other woman, and not someone less than.
Okay, I just want a couple of comments from our audience, our outside audience. I don't think there was enough information online, says Rose on Instagram. She says, I don't think there was enough information online about the potential effects of these referendums would have. The language in the amendments was a bit too ambiguous. And Debbie, again on Instagram, said, it was a no because Irish people are not stupid and have had enough. There was no confusion. We understood the implications of this referendum passing. So we're going to leave that there. We're going to take a quick break. And Marie, you are leaving us. Thank you. Coming up.